How to recognize a toxic relationship. What's up, everyone? It's Sabrina from anumo.com, and today we're going to talk about why we get into toxic relationships, the signs of a toxic relationship, especially those early signs that are really sneaky to spot, and I'm going to share how to know if your toxic relationship can be saved and become a healthy relationship. We're also going to talk about the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, because we're going to use them as a frame of reference here. Their relationship would just hit every note of toxicity, and it just illustrates every single point I'm going to make in this video. And I've also just been dying to talk about this because I just have so much to say. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to discuss what's going on in the trial. We're going to discuss their toxic relationships and the dynamics at play. And then we're going to talk about how you can learn from it so that you don't end up in this situation. It's going to be a really interesting and informative video, so make sure you watch until the very end. Real quick, if you enjoyed this video, please tap that like button. It takes less than a second. Such a quick, such an easy way to help me out, help me grow this channel. Also, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified whenever I post new videos. Also, if you have a relationship question, if you are really struggling in your love life, maybe you're struggling with a guy, you want your ex back, you're struggling with your self-esteem, and if you want to talk to me one-on-one and work through it, then you can set something up at anumo.com/coaching. I'll also link it down below. Also, for even more relationship advice, because you can never get enough, sign up for our newsletter. It's totally free. You'll get our best advice delivered into your inbox every morning. You can sign up at anumo.com/subscribe. Okay, first, let's talk about what's going on in this crazy car crash of a case, for those of you who might not know. So I'm just gonna give you the TLDR here. So Amber and Johnny were married. They had a pretty whirlwind romance. I feel like they got married pretty quickly and divorced just as quickly. And after the relationship ended, Amber ended up writing an op-ed for the Washington Post in which she said she was the survivor of domestic abuse. Now, she never named Johnny Depp in this article, but I mean, who else were you talking about, Amber? Like, obviously this is about Johnny. And as a result, he was fired from Pirates of the Caribbean. He was fired from Harry Potter, which obviously cost him who knows how many millions of dollars. So he's suing her for defamation because his career has clearly suffered enormously. And she's firing back, claiming that, no, I am the survivor of domestic abuse and Johnny abused me, and he is claiming that he didn't. So they're embroiled in this crazy trial right now, which is being televised. We're learning so many intimate details about these people's lives. It almost feels like voyeuristic, but at the same time, I like can't get enough of it because I'm a relationship person. I study relationships for a living, and there's just so much going on here. Now, here's my take, and you may not agree with me, and that's fine, but this is just my interpretation of what's going on with these two, using my instincts, which are usually pretty solid, and just based on the evidence that's presented. In terms of whether or not he did physically abuse her, I can't say. I'm inclined to say probably not, because there's just no evidence to support it. Like, she describes these horrible fights where he kicked her and punched her and this, but then there are photos of her like the day after these alleged events occurred, and she looks fine. Like she described that he broke her nose and she had a split lip, and she's like, okay, this is the date that it happened. And the lawyer's like, okay, but this is you on the James Corden show like the next day. Like, your nose is fine, your lip is fine. And she's like, oh, it's just makeup. Or in photo shoots she did after these alleged incidents, like they're showing her pictures and she's like, it's just photoshopping. So it's like, who knows? Also, she was recording him a lot. I mean, there's so much recordings of their conversations, videos, and it's like she conveniently managed to record all these moments between them, even fights between them, but never any incidences of him actually putting his hands on her or even making reference to putting his hands on her. So I don't know. Based on, if we're just looking at evidence here and the trial's still going on, I guess it's for the jury to decide who they believe. There's just such a lack of evidence. I just want to say, like, I have all the sympathy in the world for women who are in abusive relationships. Many of my readers, my clients, have been in relationships like that. So I've listened to the way women describe those types of relationships, and the way she's talking about it on the stand, it just doesn't seem right. You know, she's just waxing so poetic about it. Like, he grabbed me and I looked at the carpet and the carpet was dirty. It was so dirty. And all I'm thinking is, how did I never notice the carpet was so dirty? Like, that's how you would describe abuse if you were writing a novel and you want to paint the whole scene. but not necessarily on the stand. Okay, so I don't find her to be so believable. Is Johnny Depp an angel? Should everyone be like, oh, Johnny, this poor innocent grown teddy bear? No, because he is also clearly a toxic person. He admittedly had a major substance abuse problem during their relationship. He said some horrible, vile things to her. He's not an angel either. So what we have is two very, very toxic people who came together, and just the level of toxicity in a relationship like that. I mean, of course it imploded in the most spectacular of fashions. So that's my take on what's going on. Also, experts have testified that Amber has multiple personality disorders, and you don't even need an expert for that. Like, listening to her talk for like a minute, and I was able to diagnose her with what they came up with. So that's where I stand with that. But let's go in deeper. It was so interesting to me how he was able to become so enraptured with this woman so quickly. Like the partner he was with before that, Vanessa Paradis, they were together for 14 years, never got married, and Johnny so quickly just fell in love with Amber, married her right away, crazy whirlwind. So why? Why does that happen? Why do we get into toxic relationships in the first place? The first reason is that it feels like home. And even if your home wasn't a good one, wasn't a stable one, there is still that comfort in the familiar. Johnny testified that his mother was horribly verbally and physically abusive, both to him and to his father. And another thing I want to mention just about the recap of the trial is Amber admitted on tape to hitting Johnny. Like, that's another key point here. She admitted in multiple instances that she did hit him. She did attack him. So we know that she abused him. We do not know for certain if he abused her, but yet his career is the one that was ruined, and she didn't lose any of her movie roles. I mean, now I think they're both finished, but at that time, she wasn't losing any job opportunities. It was only him, even though she had admitted to putting her hands on him. Okay, so back to why we get into these toxic relationships. He testified at length about how horrible his mother was. And the reason he was testifying about his mother is it wasn't hard to draw that parallel between his mother and Amber. And I think that instantly something sparked in him. And that's how it happens with toxic relationships. Have you ever met someone and you barely even interacted with them, and you're like, I have to have them? You feel this intense gravitational pull towards that person. That is often coming from an unhealthy place. It is because you recognize something within them that speaks to your own trauma. Look, there is something to be said about, finding someone extremely hot and being drawn to them and physically attracted to them. What I'm talking about is a little bit different, especially if you grew up in a traumatic, chaotic household, or if you had a previous relationship or marriage that was toxic and was traumatic, and then you are drawn to certain people. Usually those people also have those same toxic traits. Sometimes you're drawn to people because they have the complete opposite of what you grew up with. Like, if your ex was one way, you go for a guy who's the complete opposite on every level. But I don't think that's what's happening here. I think that Amber, and our unconscious mind is processing so much data at the same time. We're looking at the way someone stands, the way they move, the way they speak, the way their tone of voice, their pitch, everything. We are logging in all this data, not even on a conscious level. And I think that he felt that familiarity, that pull, because she was so similar to his mother. And I think that's part of why he was so captivated by her so quickly. The psychologist Harville Hendrix, who wrote the book Getting the Love You Want, which I recommend all the time, it's a great book, he posits that we go after people who remind us of our parents, especially the parent you had a more turbulent relationship with, in order to mend our psyche, in order to mend our inner child within. We are drawn to what feels familiar, even though the familiar might not always be healthy. Now, in addition to that element of it, Amber, because she is someone with some personality disorders that seem to have gone untreated, I think he was an easy mark for her. I think she wanted to advance her career, and there is no better way for a D-list actress to advance her career than to latch on to an A-list megastar like he was. Who was Amber Heard before this? She had like a few bit parts in small movies, but she wasn't anything. So I think that she really saw this as an opportunity. That's what I think. And this is how he describes it. This was from his testimony. There was another trial in the UK because of some other article that The Sun published. So this is how he described their initial meeting. She bombed me with what appeared to be love. It was not until much later that I understood that she had an agenda, namely to get married to me in order to progress her own career and or benefit financially, and she knew how to bring it about. For example, at the time, she repeatedly told me how much she admired my films. However, later in our relationship, she admitted that she had never seen any of my films. She knew what she wanted, and I was an easy target. Mr. Depp said their time together was incredibly unhappy, adding adding she is a calculating, diagnosed borderline personality. She is sociopathic, she is a narcissist, and she is completely emotionally dishonest. I am now convinced that she came into my life to take from me anything worth taking and then destroy what remained of it. Ugh. Oof, I just got chills. I don't know, you guys, I got chills just reading that again. That's the way I see it. Obviously, I'm not diagnosing anyone. I'm not even licensed to do so. That's my opinion. That's why I think these two were drawn together. Now, for those of us who are everyday people, not necessarily trying to become A-list celebrities, I think that what's normally at play is that we're drawn to people unconsciously, sometimes because of what they can do for us. Sometimes I'm not even talking about our partners here, we have our own agenda. Maybe we want to latch onto a guy because he's the cool, confident guy. He seems to have it all together. And we kind of want to be that. And we're not that in our own lives. So that's why we're drawn to him. We want to get something out of him. We want him to feed that void within us, maybe fill it up and give us this sense of worthiness or validation or love. Now, at the same time, I also want to add, Amber claims that Johnny Depp love bombed her back, okay? Like I'm saying, I mean, I'm a little more sympathetic to him, but I think that they're both terrible and they both need a lot of help, like intensive psychiatric care. She also claims that he love bombed her, and he describes, she was the most spectacular being he had ever seen. But the way I see it is I think that his love bombing of her was more reactionary because I think he was just so taken with her. And I think he didn't stand a chance because she had so many elements that were similar to his mother. She's also just a gorgeous woman. She also knew how to charm this man on every level. And I think that his love bombing was just I think he was genuine. I don't think he had an agenda. I think he was just like, wow, you are the most magnificent thing I have ever seen. And unfortunately, I think what these two illustrate to us is the stakes of getting into a toxic relationship and letting it go on for so long. And Johnny, at an extreme, I mean, look at the toll it's taken on this man. I don't think he'll ever recover from it. I don't think his career will. Obviously, he'll take a huge financial hit as a result. And emotionally, he's already so fragile and so damaged. I don't think he'll ever recover. So I don't think most of us will experience it at this extreme, but actually no, some people do. Some people do experience it at this extreme. So that's why it's so important to get out before it gets too deep. And now we're gonna talk about how to do that. Let's talk about now some of the ways to recognize a toxic relationship. The first is you fight dirty. Now, if you guys have been following the trial and listening to the arguments these two have had, they're vicious. I mean, the names they call each other, the insults they hurl at each other, it's just like really heading below the belt, and it's nasty. A lot of couples argue. Arguing is not a bad thing. In fact, sometimes arguments can lead to resolution, which can bring you closer together. But if you are fighting like all out, knockout, drag out wars, where you are saying the most horrible things to the other person, that is not healthy. When you are fighting that dirty, and saying such horrible things to each other. I mean, she calls him a washed up old man. He says, and a has-been, and he says that she's just jealous of his career. They were horrible to each other. I cannot ever conceive of saying these types of things to my husband. And I can't imagine any healthy couple speaking this way to each other. A lot of the times, the reason it gets so nasty is because there's so much repressed rage beneath the surface, because the relationship is so unhealthy. So when you trip some wire and you get into an argument, even if it's over something minor, it can quickly escalate into something that is so ugly. You also might find you're fighting about the same things over and over and over again and just not getting anywhere. There's no resolution. Number 2, you're trying to save him. Now this one might sound a little unexpected to you, but this is one of the sneakiest ways we end up in toxic relationships. You are not here to be a martyr or a savior or a nurse or a therapist. That is not your role in a relationship. Now, as someone, me, who was once addicted to healing broken men, I understand the allure of this. Do you want to know what it is? Part of it is that it's a distraction. You don't want to deal with your own messiness, because if you're drawn to someone like this, then chances are high you have your own inner messiness. You kind of look outward and you look at him and you think, if I can fix him, then all my problems will be solved. I'm just going to heal him. It's a way to completely forget about yourself and forget about your problems and all the things you need to deal with. And you think that you have committed yourself to this worthy cause of healing him, helping him. We almost think that as soon as we heal him, we will be healed. This need to play savior is what can lead you into a codependent relationship. A codependent relationship is one where there's one weak person and one strong person. And each of them kind of has to play these roles. The strong person gets off on helping the weak person. He's a mess. He's, struggling with addiction or mental health. And we actually kind of saw this with Amber and Johnny as well. Like he even admits that she was pivotal in helping him get sober. And the weak one is dependent on the strong because they're a mess. They can't get a handle on their life. They can barely function. But the problem is you can't stay in those roles forever. Eventually the weak person's gonna get strong, and then the dynamic's gonna completely change. That weak person will come to resent the strong one for enabling them, for keeping them in that weakened state. And then the relationship will typically fall apart from there. That's where you'll typically see a guy like just dump you out of the blue or leave you for some other girl. And you're just like, but I did everything for him. I was there for him. I nursed him. I was his shoulder to cry on. I took care of him. I gave him his medicine. I created a resume for him. I helped him I helped him apply for jobs. I helped him get on his feet. I lent him money. And you're like, how could he do this to me? That's why how that dynamic typically plays out. It's not sustainable. You cannot stay in those roles forever. It's almost like you think, and I've worked with so many clients who've felt this way, like he owes you something because you took such good care of him. You martyred yourself for him. So you almost think that owes you a lifetime of love and loyalty, but it doesn't. A guy doesn't invest in you because you've invested every ounce of your soul into him. I mean, you did that of your own volition. You wanted to. So he doesn't think he needs to repay you for that. And that's not how a man invests in you. A man invests in you by being there for you, by doing things for you. He doesn't owe you anything just because you decided to sacrifice yourself for him. Unfortunately, that isn't his fault. And it's not, I mean, I understand that it wasn't consciously your fault. Your intentions were good, but this is how you set the stage to get your heart completely eviscerated. So the way to avoid this is to really take someone at face value. If he is an addict, an active addict who doesn't seem to want to get better, then there's nothing for you to do here. If he says to you, I have emotional issues, I don't want to commit, it is not your job to heal him from his old emotional wounds. That's his job. If he wants to go and deal with it and deal with his issues and then come back as a whole healed person who can give you what you want, great, wonderful, but you cannot be the one to fix him. If he says he never wants kids, then you cannot think to yourself, oh, you know what? It's just because he had such a bad childhood. So if I show him, if I help him heal and I show him what an amazing mother I would be to our children and I won't repeat the cycle of abuse, so then he'll change his mind. No, no, no. Then you're going to end up in a relationship pouring your heart and soul into it. He most likely will not change his mind. And then where are you? You know, heartbroken, and you've just spent years of your life on this. Take someone at face value. Do not look at a man as a project. You do not want a project, you want a partner. Number 3, you think the reason this relationship is so crazy is because you love each other so much. Now, who could forget that infamous incident with Will Smith at the Oscars where he slapped Chris Rock in the face? And then when he won his Academy Award a little later in the evening, the first thing he said was, well, love will make you do crazy things. Not like that, Will Smith. Love will not make you get up at the freaking Oscars. You know, I should have made a whole separate video about this and assault someone in front of millions of people. And you could say, oh, well, love made me do it. Even Johnny Depp in some of those recordings, he says, oh, the reason we're so passionate. I don't have exactly the transcript. So this is just basically what he said. Well, the reason it's like this, we go so hard is because it's love. We love each other so much. And I'm sure that's why he stayed. He thought the reason we fight so hard, the reason it's so crazy and we have these knockout, drag out fights is just because we love each other so much. And that's what we've been told. Love will make you do crazy things. Love is just so intense. You have to fight for it and there's obstacles. So if you have that thought about your relationship, like, yeah, we fight so much, it's just because there's so much love there. That is not what healthy love looks like. Again, like this traces back to your childhood. And Johnny also talked about this. I mean, his mother would beat the living daylights out of his father, and his father just took it and was stoic about it, just took it like a man. That's Johnny's perception of love. This develops in our childhood. If your parents were constantly fighting, you know, and it was always chaotic, and they said, oh, we do it because we love each other, you as a little kid internalized the idea that, well, when you love someone, you just fight all the time. Like that's what people who love each other do. So you have to recognize these beliefs that you have and you have to challenge them. Because no, that's not what people who love each other do. People who love each other do not put their hands on each other and do not hurl these horrendous insults at each other and do not aim to tear each other down. Number 4, explosive anger. If your partner has explosive anger and can fly off the handle about the littlest things, that is a very strong sign of a toxic dynamic. He obviously has his issues to deal with. People who are that prone to rage, there's something beneath the surface. But what you need to deal with is, why are you staying? Why do you want to stay? That's your toxicity that you need to address. Like, I'm not putting this all on one person. A toxic relationship is usually created by 2 people. And maybe you're the less toxic one, But if you are drawn to that situation, then there's something that you need to deal with as well. We're gonna talk about this more at the end of the video. We saw Amber, or we heard in the recordings, that she could just erupt. I mean, she was really a loose cannon. And it's not just Johnny's testimony. Her assistant claimed that she was just a nightmare to work with. She would just explode over the tiniest things. So explosive anger is just a major red flag. If you see that early on, run away as fast as you can. Number 5, they won't accept responsibility for anything. It is always your fault, never his. And your toxic partner will weave and make twists and turns in all sorts of directions in order to not be the one that's at blame for anything and to turn it all around on you. We saw this again with Amber when Johnny's saying, you know, you punched me. And she's like, I didn't punch you. I hit you. I didn't punch you. Like, that's how she said it. You're not punched. He's like, don't tell me if you punched me. Like, you punched me. And she's just like, you're such a baby. Like, completely minimizing. I feel like a not toxic, regular person would be like, I know I hate you. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. That was a horrible thing to do. Instead, she was like mocking him. That's another thing. In another recording, she's like, oh, you Johnny Depp, you're going to say you're the victim of domestic violence? And he's like, yeah, I am. And she's like, no one's going to believe you. She's like laughing at him, not taking any responsibility for the fact that she put her hands on him. A toxic person will never accept responsibility, and it will always be your fault. Now, it sounds so simplistic, but it gets so confusing because, leading to our next point, number 8, gaslighting. The reason it gets so confusing is because they gaslight you. This is like the biggest buzzword these days. I've been talking about gaslighting for a really long time. Gaslighting just means that this person makes you feel crazy for your perception of reality. For example, with Johnny and Amber, like, he's like, you hit me, you punched me. And she's like, I barely slapped you, I barely touched you. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, I have a bruise on my face. Like, you did, that happened. And she's just so dismissive of it to the point where you're just like, wait, like, am I exaggerating? Did I not perceive reality as it actually is? Like, it makes you feel crazy. That's what it is. Like, you cannot even trust your own judgment anymore. That's why it's so hard to leave. This is why you really have to watch out for these signals. This is why you really have to watch out for these signs of a toxic relationship, because it can creep up on you. And then you wake up one day and you're like, how did I not recognize how toxic the situation is? Number 7, they isolate you from your friends and family. This is another thing that happens in toxic relationships. The toxic person, or the more toxic person, because like I said, it usually takes 2 to tango, will want to isolate you from your friends and family, will want you all to himself. He'll say, your friends are all just jealous of you. Your family's so bad for you. Only I'm here, because he makes you reliant on him. Only I care about you. Nobody cares about you like I do. You feel like he's the center of your universe. And if you leave, you will literally have nothing because your friends are bad, your family's bad. That's what he's been convincing you of. We again saw this with Johnny and Amber, that he caused a major rift with Johnny's daughter to the point where she didn't even show up to his wedding. And this just shows you how far in deep Johnny was with this woman. His own daughter was like despised her, wouldn't even go to the wedding. And he's still like, oh no, I'm gonna marry this woman anyway. And it's not like he didn't know what he was getting into. Amber demonstrated all these signs before he married her. I mean, we've learned all about it in these testimonies. And he went through it with it anyway. And number 8, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. This is probably one of the biggest indicators of a toxic relationship. It's how you feel. You feel like you're walking through a minefield. And since the toxic person has such explosive rage and anger, like we discussed earlier, it is like a minefield. You never know when you're gonna trip some wire and it's just gonna erupt and that person's gonna explode. You can't just be. You're also just deeply unhappy, as Johnny described in that statement that I read earlier. You're just so unhappy. You're so on edge. You're waiting for it to get better, but nothing is getting better. So now let's talk about if your toxic relationship can be salvaged. Can it be saved? The good news is it's possible. It actually is possible. But first, and you're not gonna like this step, but it has to be done, you need to look at yourself and ask yourself, what am I contributing to this dynamic? What toxicity am I bringing in here? Because here is a guiding principle about relationships. Like attracts like. An emotionally healthy person will attract another emotionally healthy person. A toxic person will attract another toxic person. Like I said, there's that feeling of familiarity, of being seen, of being understood. I talk about this in my video about Kevin, the damage case. I think the video is called Why You Go for Guys That Are Bad for You, and I will link it down below. And in it, I described how I was in a toxic place, and that's why I was so drawn to him, because I had this darkness within me, and I felt like he did too, and he did. And I felt this deep connection because of that. That doesn't mean that he was a healthy person for me. That relationship would have been a disaster if it ever even got to that point, which it didn't, fortunately for me. So what are you doing? Maybe, yeah, he has the explosive rage, but you're raging back, you're screaming back, you're hurling insults back. Where is it coming from? Why are you drawn to this toxic relationship? Because the fact is, you were drawn to it for a reason. You stayed for a reason. There is a reason within you why you are in this dynamic. It's fulfilling a need for you, even if you're not aware of what that is. So you have to look at yourself and figure it out. What is it that you need to heal from? Next, you both have to be committed to making it work. Both of you, not just you. Almost so many of the clients that I work with are just trying to do all the work when the guy just wants no part of it, doesn't want to work on it, doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to go to therapy. If that's the case, it's not going to work. Both people need to be committed to healing this toxic dynamic, to getting it to a healthy place. And it will take a lot of work. This is not going to be an easy thing to fix. You're not just going to fix it with a few epiphanies, a few therapy sessions, and that's it. It's going to be hard. It's going to take work. So you both have to want it deeply, truly want it. And then you have a chance to fix it. And one last thing about Amber and Johnny that I wanted to mention that I forgot to in my opening, like the fact that she lied about donating all that money. I remember when this story first came out and she said that she got $7 million in the divorce settlement. And she was like, I'm donating it all to charities for battered women, or forgot there were 2 charities she was going to donate it to. And I always just assumed that she had done that because she made this whole big announcement about it. And I was just kind of like, wow, like, I don't know if I would ever do that. If I got $7 million, like, would I give it all away? And we found out she lied. She lied. She didn't even give it away. And then on the stand, oh, if you haven't seen this, please Google this part. The lawyer's like, okay, like, did you give away the money? She's like, yeah, I did. And she's like, you gave it away. And she's like, well, I pledged to. And she's like, but did you actually? She's like, pledge and giving away is the same thing. It's like, no, it's not. Like, should I just pledge to pay my mortgage? Like, oh, I pledge. A few years down the line, I'll make my mortgage payment. It doesn't work like that. And she's like going back and forth with the lawyer, and she won't just admit that she did not donate that money. Which, it's like things like this. This is why I have a really hard time sympathizing with her. Anyway, please share your thoughts on this trial, on toxic relationships, any advice, any takeaways. I feel like there's so much to discuss. I really look forward to hearing your comments and engaging with you guys. Make sure to tap that like button, subscribe to our channel. If you want to work with me, you can book a session at anumo.com/coaching, and I will see you in the next video.